What was wrong with the mini rework Fizz got a few years ago? We applied a mark. Wasn't he healthier? Why did you undo it? That's a great question. Okay, so a number of years ago, we did something called the Assassin Update. In the Assassin Update, one of the main key things about the Assassin Update was we determined that assassins bursting you in an instant with low gameplay is unfair. And therefore, most assassins need some window, regardless of how well they're doing, where you can counterplay them. That was generally the idea. And so we saw things like LeBlanc got her Q, which, had to take a time to prime before proccing. Fizz got his W, which needed time before proccing. Talon has to, proc his passive, things like that. Katarina has time before her daggers fall, etc., etc., etc. Evelyn creates a charm on you and then, has to wait until the charm procs. And so it was kind of this idea of let's put mechanics on assassins that just have this inbuilt time before they can kill you. So even if they're doing really, really well, Fizz still takes 1.5 seconds to kill you. And you're asking, wasn't he healthier? And the hard part here is we found that at the end of the day, he wasn't, for two reasons. One is when you make it so assassins can't kill you without an arbitrary time window, they actually tend to be a lot less functional. Because it turns out one of the reasons assassins are viable is because when they're far enough ahead, they can kill you very fast. So making assassins required to wait a period of time, regardless of how well they're doing, to kill you, created a situation where they were a lot less functional, and so then we had to give them other things. So if they couldn't kill you instantly, what else can they do? And that had to be some combination of be tankier, or have more utility, or have more dashes, or have more dodging, things like that. And so the end result of this type of change that said assassins always have counterplay no matter what is it created a class of characters that not only felt less functional to play, but ironically ended up feeling more frustrating to play against because of the other tools we had to give them to keep them viable, considering they no longer had the ability to kill you quickly. And so kind of counterintuitively, by making Burst more fair, we ended up making a lot of assassins feel less fair, because what is more frustrating than dying instantly to Fizz is having a Fizz jump on you, put a mark on you, taunt you a few times, and then kill you 2 seconds later. It turns out that's a more frustrating circumstance, even if you had more counterplay in the second situation. This is one of the reasons that Zed is the most frustrating assassin in the game, typically. Talked a lot on this stream about how Zed tends to have to balance for frustration. One of the reasons he's so frustrating is because his death mark kind of tortures you. It says, hey, I'm Zed, I'm not going to kill you instantly, but in 3 seconds you're dead. And that whole time I'm going to dash around and do all these things and make you feel bad about this moment where I've jumped on you. And so, yeah. TLDR, the Assassin update had a double whammy of making burst classes, a class of burst class, had a double whammy of making a class of burst characters feel less functional, while at the same time made them feel more frustrating to play against. And so we ended up reverting Fizz, reverting LeBlanc, partial reverting things on Rengar, things like that. What is the design philosophy between giving most AD carries global missiles on their ults, Draven, Ezreal, Jinx? Is it just a power budget thing? There's a lot of reasons why we might give an AD carry a global missile, but the things I would think about here are one of the biggest reasons to do it, aside from it just being very thematic, it turns out that AD carries tend to be characters about range projectiles, and so a lot of global missile projectiles are very on theme for an AD carry, just for starters. But then another thing that's interesting at AD carries though is that most AD carries, if they actually had a good ultimate, good in quotes, they would be overpowered. And what I mean by good is imagine if you gave an AD carry Malphite ult. Obviously, that would be bad on them for, certain reasons, because they have to go into melee range, but, or Karthus ult or something like that. One of the hard parts about giving AD carries really, really powerful ultimates is they already have a powerful ultimate. It's the ranged targeted basic attack. And so when we're making AD carries, a lot of AD carries, when we get to the ultimate part of their kit, we're often looking for something that like isn't super reliable and isn't super core to their combat pattern and isn't super like important when they're auto attacking you. And so because their auto attacks are so powerful, there's often like not necessarily a need to give them even more in combat power. And so that's why you'll often find that AD carries have like, you know, personal utility ults like Kaisa, or global ultimates that like, you know, they're still good. Like you can use Ezreal ult when you're fighting someone to try to kill them. You can use Draven ult to kill someone in mid-fight. But usually it's like, okay, this is an execute at the end as opposed to something you're using to like guaranteed kill and combo someone down. This is why also you see a lot of AD carries with spells that deal magic damage and don't scale. Like sometimes people ask things like, hey, why doesn't Jinx's grenades scale? Or sorry, like why doesn't Jinx's grenades scale? Or why doesn't Jin's traps scale, right? And like one of the things, well, they do scale, but like why do they do magic damage and things like that? And like why aren't they super core to his combat pattern early and easy to miss? And like oftentimes as an AD carry, because their basic attacks are so incredibly powerful, you have to find a way to create a spell that is both not super giga powerful and reliable and satisfying. So global ults are an example of something like that. And of course, it always just depends on the character. Obviously, some AD carries can have really powerful in-combat ultimates. It just depends on who they are and like what they do. But if your ultimate is like super strong in combat, you might need to take like cost elsewhere in your kit to make that okay. Lucian is more of a caster, so you might be like, well, what about Lucian? His spells are really powerful in combat. Well, the thing about Lucian is that Lucian actually has, overall, for AD carries, weak basic attacks, right? If you compare Lucian's attack range and attack power and, like, repeated attack damage to someone like a character like Jinx or Twitch, right? Like, it actually doesn't compare. It's actually a lot weaker in a lot of cases. And so Lucian is able to have stronger spells. You could look at it one of two ways. Either A, Lucian is able to have stronger spells, because his auto attacks are weaker, or you could look at it in the sense that Lucian has to have weaker auto attacks because his spells are stronger.